Things in the automotive industry move very, very quickly, especially in this day and age. But there are some manufacturers who have a reputation for taking things a lot slower than others. I think you know who I'm talking about. Porsche, who particularly with the 911 have this thing about making very small, very incremental changes. Until now.
This is the new £136,000 911 GTS T-Hybrid.
Yes, come on.
And whilst it might look familiar, this generation brings with it very substantial changes. With new technology, new interiors, new exteriors, comprehensive chassis upgrades, and biggest of all, new engines. All designed to take the venerable 911 to new levels. Or so they claim.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. It kind of looks like the old one, and the one before that, and actually the one before that as well. But I promise you, they have been busy.
The main thing they've been busy with in the case of this new GTS is the introduction of a brand new hybrid powertrain. Yes, this new GTS version of the 992.2 is powered not only by a rear-mounted twin-turbo 6-cylinder boxer engine, but for the first time ever, electricity. Blasphemous. But we'll get to just how blasphemous in just a moment. For now, let's focus on the looks.
The exterior upgrades are very subtle, but I promise you, the GTS looks like no other 911 that came before it, as long as you're willing to look very closely. So, a couple of things they've done is they've got a new front bumper and a new headlight design. This new headlight actually incorporates all the functions that you'd find in the separate lights that were on the previous generation, including the indicators, the high beams, the main beams, the side lights, and the DRLs all in one unit. And very fetching they are too. By removing this light that was down here on the bumper on the previous generation, they've freed up a load of room down here for a bigger air intake. And that is dominated by these 5 vertical slats that open and close to improve aerodynamic efficiency or enhance cooling for the electrical components. Back to these lights though, by the way, these actually have 32,000 individual beams, which make them excellent for lighting up the road ahead.
You'll find some subtle changes at the rear too. There are new lights with an updated LED arc, raised Porsche lettering, a new upper vent design, updated bumper and tailpipes that have been moved more closely together. As for tyres, it rides on larger 315/30 ZR 21-inch rubber at the rear as standard, with the fronts being wrapped in 245/35 ZR 20. But as interesting as it is on the outside, or not, it's what's on the inside that's most fascinating. For this generation, Porsche has developed a new 3.6-litre boxer engine, but with an E-turbo bolted to the side, incorporating an electric motor between the compressor and the turbine wheel, designed to spin up in an instant using electrical power rather than relying on exhaust gases. The increased size of the engine is as noteworthy as the packaging, which sees the exhaust mounted to the side to accommodate the new turbo design. Attached to the engine is a new transmission with an electric motor built directly into the gearbox housing connected to the crankshaft via the flywheel. The motor provides an additional 54 metric horsepower, as well as working as a starter, alternator, and generator, teaming up with the engine to provide energy to or take energy from a 27 kilogram, 1.9 kilowatt-hour battery pack mounted in the front of the car. All of this makes the GTS T-Hybrid 50 kilograms heavier than before. But despite that increase, it's now faster than ever.
Total power is a very healthy 541 PS. That's 61 PS more than the previous version. I'll tell you what, torque ain't bad either.
Even without the assistance of the e-motor, the boxer engine provides 570 Newton meters. With it, that jumps up to a very healthy 610 Newton meters.
That power increase is actually fairly generous for a Porsche 911 because normally when they go from one version to another, they tend to give you approximately around 30 horsepower more. So to get double that, I think we should be grateful. Even though power is coming from a very geeky powertrain, I don't think it takes a genius to work out what that actually means. What it means is more performance, and it does feel very quick. I do have to ask though, is it enough?
On the one hand, the new GTS provides a decent jump in power over the model it replaces, but Porsche's rivals have proven that in moving to hybrid technology, massive jumps are possible. The difference between a McLaren 600 LT and its hybrid replacement, the Artura, is a full 100 horsepower. The Ferrari 296 GTB provides 110 more over the F8, so power junkies have reason to complain, but the GTS is still rapid.
Porsche claim it'll do 0 to 62 in 3 seconds flat, and yes, that is about the same as the aforementioned McLaren Artura to 62, and it's only 0.1 seconds slower to 62 than the Ferrari 296 GTB. Top speed, 193 miles an hour. Forget the power though, I think what's most impressive about the GTS is the responsiveness. You might be familiar with a phenomenon known as turbo lag. Well, this doesn't suffer from it, let me tell you. Having that electric turbo just means the thing spins up and provides boost almost in an instant, so there's no delay whatsoever when it comes to getting a response from the throttle pedal. Porsche use all kinds of fancy graphs and PowerPoints to show off the torque curve in their cars, but I can describe it to you very simply. The one in this, it kind of looks like an electric car. It goes up very suddenly and then it flattens out at the top. What it means is when you want the car to respond, it responds. It's not quite electric car levels, but there's no hesitation from this thing. You put your foot down and off it pops.
It's impressive, but was it necessary? Well, yes, the standard GTS felt incredibly responsive in 90% of situations, but if you've ever driven it on a tight, twisty track, especially with the manual gearbox, turbo lag was a frustrating factor. As an example, power oversteer out of a corner like this wasn't always straightforward. Now, with the added responsiveness, that's no longer an issue.
What an absolute joy this car is to drive. I love the steering. Porsche always get that right. The bigger rubber also means we got more traction and can carry more speed through the corners. This thing set a Nürburgring lap time of 7 minutes, 16.9 seconds, and that's 8.7 seconds quicker than the previous GTS. Okay, they set that time using the aero pack with a huge fixed wing, but it's incredibly impressive nonetheless. Some people might question that achievement and say it's only 2% quicker over a 7-minute lap, but if you extrapolate that and you apply that logic to a 2-minute lap, well then a 2% increase means about 2 seconds off a lap, which is actually pretty impressive. It's only right we see how playful it is as well. Send it in here, on the power. Yeah, the back end comes round very nicely. And it's not as angry as you might expect from a rear engine car. It's actually quite progressive. Look at that. Oh, it likes to play.
That, of course, makes it an effective track day tool. But what about those of us who aren't interested in destroying our tires? The new 992.2 wouldn't be a proper 911 if it wasn't available in a variety of body styles, right? So you'll be pleased to hear that the hybrid system is also present in the convertible as well as this, the Targa. Arguably more beautiful, and with a mechanically folding hardtop that lets you experience the elements on your terms. It has all the same exterior upgrades as the coupe, the new lights, the improved aero, the updated rear bumper and exhaust outlets, as well as sharing a few interior upgrades. There's a new wireless phone charger, which is cooled so it charges more reliably. There's an updated infotainment system with better integration with Apple CarPlay. And a new starter button, although that one seems like a bit of a backward step over the previous solution if you ask me.
I'll tell you what else is a bit of a backward step. They've gotten rid of all the physical gauges in this car. Remember that lovely analog rev counter on the previous GTS? Gone completely. In its place, we now get a very large curved display showing you all of your driver screens. Now, it does come with some advantages. First and foremost, you can now actually see all of the gauges. The previous car had you peering around the steering wheel just to get a glimpse of how much fuel you had left, and this is entirely visible from all positions. It's also highly customizable as well, so you can choose from a couple of different rev counter designs, one where the rev limit is down by the 4 o'clock position, and another in a more traditional design where it's up by the 2 o'clock position. And it's also got, for some reason, night vision, which you can even use in the daytime. I'll tell you what else is pretty cool, and this isn't a new feature, but not a lot of people know about it. You can actually adjust the passenger seat using the controls on the driver's seat. So now, when you're on a road trip, you can fold your passenger in half without them having any idea what's going on. Endless fun. So we need to talk about this hybrid system in a bit more depth because honestly, it is fascinating. It is so different to most hybrids. For a start, the battery pack in this thing is titchy. The one in the Cayenne is 25 kilowatt hours. The one in the McLaren Artura is around 7 kilowatt hours. The one in this is 1.9. I think it's actually smaller than the battery in my electric lawnmower. So obviously, it's nowhere near big enough to give this car an electric-only mode, but it is plenty big enough to run the electric turbocharger and that 54 horsepower motor in the transmission. And I know what you're thinking because I've been thinking it myself, how quickly will the battery run out? But honestly, this thing charges as quickly as it discharges, and you can see exactly what it's doing by looking at the screen.
The battery only really discharges energy at low speeds, helping the GTS with its responsiveness and initial acceleration. The faster you go, the less it needs to help, and it's at this point it can begin recharging, using energy from the internal combustion engine, up to 40 kilowatts of power from the e-motor, or up to 11 kilowatts of energy from the turbo, which harnesses exhaust gases to send electricity back into the pack.
I said earlier that having that hybrid system is really helpful on the track, especially in tight corners like this one, but it's also actually very useful out here on the road as well because it gives you that little bit of extra flexibility and bandwidth almost no matter where you are in the rev range. I was actually driving the entry-level Carrera just yesterday, fabulous car, but it doesn't have the hybrid system, and I wanted to see exactly how much turbo lag it had. So I put it into third gear, locked it in at about 50 kph and floored it, and honestly, it took about 2-3 seconds before you got that boost and the car started to really move. In this, it happens a lot quicker. I'll demonstrate. So right now, I'm in manual mode, fourth gear, 50 kph, floor it, and look at that. It takes off so much quicker. You get instantaneous access to that 150 newton meters and the extra 53 horsepower right off the bat. Plus, within a second or so, the engine's fully woken up and you are good to go. So having a fancy PDK with an electric motor integrated inside is all well and good, but playing devil's advocate, I'm gonna have a bit of a moan, and that is you can no longer have a manual gearbox in this hybrid setup. It's just not gonna happen. And that makes it a lot less fun. On the racetrack, you might not notice because things are coming at you so fast, but on the public road when you're driving at 7/10, 8/10 maybe, having a manual box to roll up and down just makes all the difference and makes the car feel a lot more engaging. This, not so much. Another thing I'll have a moan about are the running costs. Now, this car wasn't developed with efficiency in mind, which means it'll drink a fair amount of petrol, around 25 to 27 miles per gallon, if you take it easy. Sorry to keep bringing up the Artura, but that's gonna give you double the economy. I do love the way this car drives though. Everything is so on point. The steering is unmatched. The acceleration, brisk. Sound of that engine, absolutely fabulous. The gearbox, snappy, responsive. And the thing is just so bloody fast. And then because we're in the Targa, you can enjoy all of that, plus the open air. It's just an absolute joy to drive.
But as good as the new 911 GTS T-Hybrid is on the road, where it really impresses, especially in coupe form and especially in rear-wheel drive, is on the racetrack. Of course, some will ask why it had to be quite so complicated or quite so expensive, while others will ask why Porsche didn't just bite the bullet and go fully electric. And I do sympathize.
Bottom line though, when you're assessing any sports car, is you gotta ask yourself, is it fun? And I'm having a blast out here at Ascari, one of my favorite circuits. Twisty, technical in places, also fast and scary with all the things that you can hit off to the sides. But this is an absolute joy. I feel in total control of this car, and it is a beast, an absolute joy to drive. Those of you who are worried that the 911 would be ruined or compromised somehow by having a hybrid system, let me reassure you that is really not the case. This thing, in a lot of ways, is better than ever.